So just a quick introduction. I'm Gary Middleton, Football Development Officer at Northumberland FA. I've got Helen Beals, our Marketing Communications Officer, who'll be working on the chat tonight. As we say on all our webinars, if everyone can make sure you keep your cameras switched off and your microphones on mute, it'll give a better quality presentation over the course of the night. The presentation will be recorded, and Helen will put that up on the website and the YouTube channel later on this week. Graeme's added the questions to the presentation from the enrolment form that some of we added in. But if anyone's got any other questions tonight, please feel free to add them into the chat. And if we've got time at the end of the presentation, myself and Graeme will go through them. So we'll make a start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome along to our 10th coach development event. Back in May last year, we sent out a survey to all the coaches and clubs in the county on what area of support you would require in your coach development, and the youth development phase had an extremely high percentage within the survey that we carried out that came back to us. So it's taken me a little while, but we've managed to pin Graeme down tonight, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy the night and take lots away from it for our coach development. So it gives us great pleasure to introduce Graeme Carrick, FA Youth Coach Developer, who's exceptional amount of knowledge and experience around this phase of coaching. So Graeme, just over to you, if you can just introduce yourself and just your current role at the FA.
Yeah, cheers guys. That's some build up that. Yeah, obviously Graeme Carrick. I probably know most of you. I can't see the list. I can't see the chat box when you share your screen and these things. So guys will be picking up the questions. But also what's important is just if you've got any comments and stuff as you go, put stuff in the chat box and get a bit of a conversation going amongst yourselves. As you've got, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in. But if they're awkward questions, then just point them towards Gaz. That's fine. And the other thing, just before we start, I really need to apologise for my bonnet. I think Gary said when I came on the call, you asked if I was wearing a bike helmet. Unfortunately, it's just me hair. So I know it's borderline unprofessional, but it's not really much I can do. I'm not sure someone with a head my size would pull a skin off. So I'll get that bit out of the way. So we won't talk about bonnets anymore. Yeah, so good to see you all. Thanks for coming on. Obviously, the guys must be bored if you're coming on, but no, great to see everyone. Hopefully, it'll have some value for you. And I have tried to tailor it to some of the questions that you came around. Where this came from, guys, just said, I think there was a survey you might have done about a year ago where you asked where the county asked yourselves what subjects might you want covered or what areas. So I know I've done a thing a couple of years ago. We're starting the DNA roadshows. I did a practical event up in Northumbria, and I've done bits in the past. But the idea was then just quite broadly just to do some around the youth development phase. My current day job is working at the FA as a FA youth coach developer, which means working in the boys' academies in the North East, helping and supporting coaches through their qualifications and just through their ongoing development, really. So that's what I'm currently doing now. After previously being an FA skills coach, working in the mentor program for years, and spending a lot of time in grassroots football as well. So hopefully if there's any questions from either, whether it's more of a talent pathway angle or a grassroots angle, then I'll be able to share some thoughts on that. The other thing that I'm doing at the FA, I've sort of got a split role, is still working with Pete Sturgis and Paul McGuinness and Paul Holder and a few others, looking at player development and how we educate coaches through our courses and online content in regards to player development. So hopefully that'll come out again today. And one of the other things is, I'm sure a lot of you have seen Pete Sturgis's work or Paul McGuinness's stuff on Twitter, and hopefully you'll see the links that these phases and these things that we're talking about aren't like separate. It's the same, it's real similar and same way of thinking about just what can we do for the kids. So that's really, so it's going to be quite broad tonight. Before I get into what we're going to cover, this thing's the most important thing for me. The spirit of football. It's a phrase Paul McGuinness talks about, but we can't ever lose sight of what we're doing whether we're coaching, whatever role we've got. It's about fostering this and keeping that flame for football burning really bright. And what does the spirit of football mean? It's just that thing, that feeling that you get from football. We'll all have a different connection to the game, and football will have a different relationship with it. It'll mean different things to different people, but fundamentally, that's our biggest job, to make sure we're not the person that puts the flame out for the kids or for the players that we're working with, especially in this phase, but in any phase or even working with adults. So what do we do? What role can we play? Now, sometimes that is out of our control, but it's important we acknowledge and recognise it. And that has to be front and centre. And that's the same whether a kid's playing for the first time at 12 or 13, or playing really informal in the park, or whether they're playing for England. It really doesn't matter that. The love of the game is so important. It's not just a fluffy thing. It is about engagement and enjoyment, but it's probably the fuel for practicing and getting better and overcoming the setbacks and the challenges that the kids, whatever the pathway is, they'll face through this youth development phase. It's tough. It's not easy going through growth and maturation. So the spirit of football is like the thing that fuels it, and we need to keep that front and centre. And as I said, we'll all have our own story when it comes to football. We'll all have lived our own journey. We'll have had different experiences, good and bad. But it's that feeling, and just a few pictures in the background might just sort of bring that to life a little bit about the feeling. And it's almost the stuff of playing in the garden with a ball, messing about with the ball, play with your mates, playing five-a-side with Terry Mitchell on a Friday night, which I'd recommend anyone to do. He's the best 1-2 player I've ever seen. Or it might be that feeling of when you're a kid or anytime, and you're like, you got the match with your parents or your grandparents for the first time. It's that feeling of football, the connection to the game, or that feeling where you're playing, it's really muddy and you think you're muddy, and you come home and you go and have a shower, and then you get out of the shower and you realise, oh no, I've like missed loads of mud off my legs, so I've got to go back in. Or maybe that's just me, but that feeling, that's football. So we need to keep that front and center of our thinking and in our coaching. And just a little bit more on that, there's a podcast out today that Chris Moore, who some of you might know, sent from a guy called Tony Whelan from Man United. I spoke with Tony. He's worked in the academy there for years, and he was an ex-player back in Matt Busby's day. And he talks about for coaches and especially youth development, knowing when you need to coach and when you need to put your coaching qualification in the drawer and just leave it there, because actually they don't need that tonight. They don't need that from you. They just need you to be on their side. They need you to just leave them and let them breathe. And it's a really, I think, good way of looking at youth development in regards, what do the kids need, and then so what can you do, and who do they need you to be? So we'll come on to a bit of that as we go. So tonight, as you can tell, I love waffling already, but we'll cover three or four things really. Skillful players, what that is, we'll come to that at the end. We'll talk about these two principles of the individual within the team and play with freedom. These two phrases came up in the question, so it's why I've sort of targeted towards that tonight. And then the title is like Bridging the Gap, and that's what we'll start with. What I mean by that is, I think, and this has been the case for a while, I think we're really clear about what. So for those people that don't know, because it's different in boys' academies, we call it the professional, the foundation phase is 5 to 11s, youth development phase is 12 to 16s, and professional development phase is 17 to 23s. Now, that's not the same in the girls' pathway. They don't have the same terminology for that. In grassroots and in different areas in schools. So basically, it's what we're saying is foundation phase is there's kids in primary school, 5 to 11, playing mini soccer. I think we're really, through the work of Pete Sturgis in particular, I think we've made huge strides. And Nick Levitt with the youth development review, I think it was 2012, with a change to game formats for the kids. I think it's the most child-centered, child-friendly sort of system we've had for the kids. The experiences that the young kids get in those early stages is brilliant. Often, not always, but often. And I think we're clear about what it should look and feel like for kids at that age. It's always a challenge as a coach to deliver that, but I think we know the types of things, and kids can be free, can express themselves. People have really taken to Sturge's phrase around staying on the ball, and it's around individual skill development and individually being in control of your moment with the ball and without the ball, and really embrace that. Again, not everyone, but probably the vast majority, and playing in formats that are suitable to the age of the kids and the stage that they're at. I think we're also pretty clear when it gets to even like the top end of this youth development phase of 15, 16 and above, around what that looks like when it's a little bit more team orientated, and you're getting towards adulthood in all of the four corners as we'll come to. And if we just think back, I always ask this question because I think when we talk about kids this age, it's really important to check back in around who were you when you were 12, 11 or 12, but also who were you when you were 16, 15, 16, maybe working, maybe going to, maybe starting work, maybe getting up to some stuff away from football that you shouldn't, maybe going on to play football at different levels, or playing adult football even at that age, going on to college, but certainly making some more serious life choices and being a bit more grown up. When you think about the start of this phase, as we call it, when you're like 11, remember that last day of primary school, when you're going into the secondary school and the big school, and then you arrive in the big school and you realise you've gone from being the big fish in the primary school pond to the smallest kid in the schoolyard when you get to the big school. But so it's that remembering what it's like to be that age and what football means to you, and that's the stuff on the left around playing in the schoolyard, or playing in the street, or playing in all the different formats, and what football means to you as a kid, and dreaming and wanting to replicating your favourite players, getting lost in matches that last 3 hours on the field, on the street, and then getting towards the sort of more serious end, if you want to call it that, of adult football, whatever level that is. And I think, as I said, really, towards the top end of the youth development phase, I think we're pretty good and pretty clear about what culture might look like, and like you say, quite team oriented often, and what's it like for the group and the way we speak and engage with the players. But then I think there's this gap between, especially say 12 to 14, maybe even 10 to 15, and maybe slightly different for boys and girls. But sometimes it feels like, and I think it's sometimes a bit of an academy thing, but also I think just in grassroots, in recreation and not just in football, but in wider than that, around this gap. It's almost, kids get a great experience in the foundation phase, and it's like, right, all the best. We're not sure what to do with you. See if you can get through this muddled few years where your body's changing, you're changing, life's changing for you. We'll see you at the other side if you make it there. So how do we bridge this gap? How do we bridge this gap for the kids? So that's just the visual that I've just fiddled about with, to try and represent that of what is that accurate? Is it not? It'll be different for different people, different places, but that's what I'm talking about tonight. How do we extend and build on from the foundation phase at the right stage at the right time, so it's progressive, so the kids get what they need. So we'll have a little look at some of that. And this is just the same thing, but from a different perspective. So you're that kid and you're like 10, 11, and you're looking, and this, you see they almost, the ideal picture is you've got the adult at the other side of the bridge, thinking, well, this is what it looks like over here. It's all right, yeah, when you get here. But it's not always this smooth path getting there. Now, some of that is the kids themselves, through their growth, through ups and downs they go to face through the teenage years, around their physical growth, around their brain development, all the things we know about teenagers, the Kevin and Perry years, the mood swings, and the some of the challenges teenagers have, but also the opportunities around exploring, risk taking. All these things bring up some challenges, but also life, and either the seriousness or the distractions of other things in life really sort of, I'm going to say getting in the way, not getting in the way, it's maybe the wrong way of putting it, but are factors in the footballer journey, really. So what is it? How do we prepare the kids for that journey, but also prepare a better journey for them? Now, some kids' journey is good and is healthy and is conducive to them development at the right stage and at the right time. But sometimes it just feels like there's some holes in the bridge that they've got to try and jump over. and we lose kids. So sometimes it's the case in talent systems where for lots of different reasons, loads of different reasons, that kids maybe fall a bit by the wayside, or in any type of football where it's these ages, especially now, the ages drop from probably 16 10 years ago to more 14 15 around the dropout in grassroots of kids falling out the game, again for different reasons. But what can we do to better prepare them? Now, there's a couple of things we need to do. So we need to prepare and design the system as best we can, and we're constantly looking at that at the FA. And I know we'll all have really strong views on that, around game formats, around competition formats, about all the whole big range of things, which, as I said before, Gaz can answer all them questions. So that is a big factor. But there's also then us as coaches in what we value, in the way we work with the players, and the way we are with the players, and the opportunities we create for the players. What can we do? What's in our sort of control and our grasp to give the kids the best possible experience? And if they do lose interest or find interest in a different thing, or actually when they get to 14 or 15 and they say, do you know what, I can't play anymore, I need to work because of some circumstance, or I need to study more at school because I'm behind, they're like really positive reasons. Really, that's fine, but it shouldn't be because of I've had a bad experience with football, or my coach put us off football for life, or my football experience I wasn't very good anymore. I didn't enjoy it. Not like I did when I was a kid. Not like I did when I was 7, 8, 9-year-old. So it's how to protect childhood and in a life sense, but in a football sense, around the experiences that these kids get. And it's an ongoing consideration, really. One of the things is, as I say, one of the reasons for this labelling of foundation phase, youth development phase, it's helpful in some ways. It's helpful in respect of when you think of child development and the stages that children will go through in the growth. In some ways, there's some science behind it. In other ways, it's common sense. Really, is kids go through some change in this age group, and the phases give us a chance to talk about primary school kids and the tendencies, as Pete Sturgis has done so well, as I said, around what children in that age group need, what they like, what they tend to connect with, what experiences they might need. And the same with the youth development phase, because when they come through this phase, they'll be dealing with growth, maturity, growth spurts, puberty. They'll be going through all this stuff around the brain development, adolescence, around the way they are in relation to themselves and others, the social factors. So that really comes into play roughly around that age. So it's helpful to talk about these phases in that way for that reason. The unhelpful bit, though, is it's almost at the end, this end of the foundation phase comes at 11, and all of a sudden they jump into this youth development phase, and they treat different sometimes. Not always, I get that. Sometimes, but they often treat different because now you're in the youth development phase. Now you need to grow up. It's like sometimes we don't know how to fill this gap and bridge the gap, and we'll fill it from the adult model down. And it's a concern because it's not right for the kids in the stage of development that the kids are at. So what we need to do is build on from and extend on from the foundation phase. So messages like staying on the ball, don't stop. So I'll come on to that a little bit around skill later. So players, there's a question about playing with freedom. That doesn't stop. It's actually, you could argue, as important, more important in this age because of the way the kids are wired, where they'll want to take risk, they'll want to test boundaries. Anyone that's coached teenagers or as a parent of teenagers will understand the frustrations of sometimes it's quite hard work. You'll get challenged, they'll test the boundaries, they'll say how far they can push you. That's natural, the brain's wired that way. That's all, but it's good. It can be dangerous, obviously, and it can be counterproductive, but it can be really good for learning because they want to explore and they want to test the boundaries. So put that in a football sense, and we'll get into that. It's a great, if we can harness it, it's a great way of helping them explore and channeling it in the right way so they can stretch the capabilities as they grow and as the body grows and as the mind changes and as their brain develops. They can take on information in different ways, they can think in different ways. So it's, how do we just harness all that and understand that, yes, the experience does need to change a little bit, but some of the principles are actually, that Pete's talked about, Sturgis talked in the foundation phase, is still really relevant. And then it's just how we can keep revisiting that and also build bits on. Sometimes we build stuff on without revisiting, or sometimes we just skip some stages from focusing around the individual to focusing around the team, and hope they survive and make that jump. Hope they get there in a football sense, where what we're really looking at and what we need to think is, well, what are some of the steps that are going to help them? Now, the other thing is, obviously, each kid's different. So again, we'll come on to that. But just this thing of the reality of the kids, especially when you're looking at over a year or two, they'll be going through some change and facing some challenges. So a project a couple of years ago got asked by by Dan Ashworth, who was technical director at the time, to follow on from some of Sturge's work. It hasn't materialised to the extent that we'd planned at the start for various reasons. But the thinking's there, and the thinking's in the stuff that we're doing moving forwards around how it builds. So this idea of a spirit of football and loving the ball, loving the game is vital. That's the ethos. It's really important from the foundation phase through to keep that going. And it gets threatened more through these ages. And if the kids don't like it, they'll vote with their feet. But also the importance of focusing on the person, developing the person and developing the player. And it needs to be inclusive for all. And then the principles are, what is the environment? What does it feel like to come to play wherever you're coaching? What would it feel like to be that kid turning up? What environment is it for them? What do they get the chance to do? Who do they get the chance to be? What experiences do they get? And I mentioned about revisiting, about formats. So do they just jump, or do they get the chance to revisit some of the formats that they have played in the past? But you know what? It's still really good for the learning to do it again. So they might play Lemby 11, and that might be the match program, but there'll still be value in them playing futsal or other formats of the game as well. So how do we keep that going? And give some variation and volume around that. But the two bits I'm going to focus on from tonight is the individual within the team and play with freedom. And where this thing links together, that's Kev Betsy in the bottom right. So he's when we're doing this, starting this work, Kev was the under-16s coach, and the remit is, well, how do we connect the foundation phase with the national teams and the messages for the game? But they do link. So individual with the team, Pete's talked about for so many years. It's one of the core things of the England national teams, actually, with 15s plus. Same with play with freedoms. It's one of the core headline statements that they use with the players. So the links are there. People often ask what comes next, and yeah, I think there's some real core beliefs that are actually there that do run through. So that's a little bit of the intro and the background around the kids and around the thinking and like some of the considerations and who are the players, what do they need. But what I'm trying to get us to almost think about is who are the players and what experiences do they need, and starting from that point. So a couple of questions that came from this, and guys, if there's any more, please throw them in. But moving from 9-a-side to 11-a-side, any advice? In a real quick, I'm going to try and be quick with these answers. The advice would be around, one of the things is around expectations. Don't expect, because they're going into 11 that they're going to play the game like you see on TV, that the players are going to understand the positions in the team and they're going to play 4-3-3 with inverted wingers and false nines and stuff. It won't look the structure, and it'll look the way the kids' football is meant to look. So that's one thing about the expectation, and the patience is just helping them. They'll learn. If they play, they'll learn. They'll get it. And just notice how they're getting on. But one of the things I'm making it smoother is to talk to the kids about it, about the challenges that they're going to face, about what they're coming into. One of the solutions people often think is to try and then start playing Lemby 11 a year early to prepare for the time they become an Lemby 11. I'm not sure that really sort of like defeats the object, because there's a reason they're meant to be playing 9v9. But a little bit of that can be helpful, that they play a little bit Lemby 11 once in a while and build it up, so it isn't just one cut off point again. But also when they do move to a Lemby 11, continuing in some ways, even if it's in training with different formats, whether it's 5v5 or 7v7, even for the youth development phase, is really important. Is there a case for 9v9 continuing? A personal opinion would be, yeah. To what extent? It depends. Yeah, we could spend all night talking about that. Yeah, I think there is a case, and we are looking at it for different reasons. One for player development and skill development. The other one around player engagement, around what players are saying from some of the research. The challenge is with some of this stuff, what works for one kid and what some kids benefit from. The other kids might say, nah, actually that's the thing that puts me off. So some kids are motivation and want it to look and feel like the adult game. So playing 11v11 is along those lines. Sometimes though, for kids, they don't get as much. I'm going to come on to it later. They don't get as many touches of the ball or as much action in the game. So actually, it's like I don't want this. I don't want to be stood on the wing and not really getting a kick. I'd rather go and play indoor football. I'd rather play futsal with my mates. So it's about understanding the benefits. And even if the rules in the league say the game's program is going to be 11v11, how do we signpost kids? So I'm not suggesting that grassroots coaches need to give more time if they haven't got the time to give, but just wondering how we can signpost kids to those and see the value in those small-sided formats as well. Rotating positions, I think it generally would probably happen less, or the bandwidth might get smaller. So in foundation phase, every kid might play every position. Now you still might do that to a point. I know the goalkeeper. There's pluses and minuses. I would say it depends on the group of the players, but also on the goalkeeper themselves of what they want out of their football experience and where they're at. As to how to answer that question, sometimes goalkeepers are pretty set by that age and thinking, well, do you know what? I'm a goalkeeper. That's why I play. I just want to be a keeper. So you can obviously play them out in training, whether you play them out in matches. Again, it depends on the keeper, but the general thing about rotation would be, so you might have someone that you think, do you know what, they tend to play right wing or right, but so they might play 2 or 3 positions, not every position, or some kids might play every position, or some kids might. I think it's just understanding the rotation, the benefits from playing different positions, and sometimes, especially late developers, it might be useful to rotate so they get different experiences, or it might be that they just need to get used to playing in a position because they get used to the surroundings and the pictures that they get. And it might even be for a few weeks that, you know what, you're just going to play this position for a bit. You're only going to play one position, you get used to it, you build your confidence within that position. Or it might be for various reasons that you do play them in different positions for a different experience, or because of, it might be growth related, it might be a different challenge, it might be to keep giving them different experiences. Because one of the things, the flags, is there's so many examples still, and it's not just about pro game, but there's so many examples of players who end up becoming top players that change positions really late. There's some that, like Michael Owen, Jermaine Defoe, who were strikers, always strikers, probably always going to be strikers. I'm not saying they would never have played a different position, but so there's an argument for that. There's also the thing of there's others that have, like Graeme Carrick was a striker, and the national school he started playing midfield at the back. There's loads of examples of people that have changed position. Even Wan-Bissaka is a recent one. He was a winger at Crystal Palace until 17-18 and became a fullback. So I think it's just understanding your players, who are they, why do they play, and paying some attention to it, really, as much as anything. I think, well, why do the kids play in these positions? Anything, guys?
Yeah, couple here, Cara. Most challenging aspect of coaching in the youth development phase?
Most challenging aspect? Depends on the setting to a point, but I think that can be the teenage, the sensitivity, especially now on social media, around sort of behavior management, but how you work with the kids, especially when you've got kids with some challenging behaviors. It can be quite hard because it can be, as kids get to this age, because of where the brains are wired a bit. I say wired, that's wrong. That's not the scientific term by any means, and I'm not a scientist, as you can tell. But yeah, that social group, the strength of the social group, it could be like one of the biggest strengths, but it can be a real challenge. And I just say now, as people coaching now and social media, the stuff that goes on around it, helping players be themselves in a way that they're impression managing, so sometimes they don't want to be seen to do things, or they want to play up to the persona, or they've got stuff going on outside their life. So I think that's I think that can be a real challenge. And they will vote with their feet at times. So when they're in the foundation phase, the parents might want them to come. If they're 14 and 15 and they don't want to go, there's a good chance they just won't go. So that's a challenge. But one of the things for us as coaches is when you're working, if you think back yourselves as teachers or coaches or teenage experiences through this age group that were either really beneficial or really bad, what were the things that made it that way? And one of the things around like who your best teachers, coaches, it's often the people that were there for you, stuck by you. There was an element of discipline, but at the same time an element of freedom, that you could be yourself, but there were some clear boundaries. So that consistency in the boundaries is important. But I think that it's a challenging time for the kids. So they're going through a lot of change. Part of the brain that is linked to dopamine and all that stuff around. They want risk and want reinforcement, but the logical part of the brain hasn't quite caught up yet. So you will get a lot of like risk-taking behaviours and changes of behaviours in these ages. It's natural. We've all been teenagers, and as I said before, the Kevin and Perry stuff. It's natural. So that can be quite hard can be quite challenging to coach and keep the group together. But I always think, sometimes with that and with challenging kids, you might not like you do for the thanks, but you might not get the thanks now at all. But maybe in 10 years' time, when you're walking down the street, and that kid that maybe you're the only person in their lives that believes in them, that gives them a chance, that stands by them when everyone else isn't, or when they're having problems with school or having problems in the home, like whatever. So on the clip I put at the start, one of the kids, where football is the best place. It's where I feel safest. It's where I can be myself, and I just get lost in it. I don't think of anything else. So some kids are coming with that. It's like the best place to come. It's the safest place for them. So providing that, even if it might be challenging, it's like it can be so powerful for the kids to play that role for them, of being there, being supportive, being consistent, being there every week, being on their side, giving them a chance. That does come with challenges at times, but like I say, it is worth it in the end, I think. So yeah, I think that's a challenge.
Cara, what's the best bit of advice anyone's given you around this phase?
I think not skipping stages and not thinking because they look like adults, we've got to treat them like adults. And there's a bit in there around they want to be treated like adults as well. So 15, 16-year-olds are club, but they might look physically and even socially. Do you know what I mean? There might be some of them will be out in the town at that age, but they're still children. They're still at school. They're still you just need that patience and seeing past some of the behaviours that they like project because of the social group and all that, and just actually sometimes is not treating them as adults, both as kids, but in a football sense, where even some of the best kids, there can be a temptation to skip past some of the fundamentals to more of the sort of fashionable team tactics and all that, because they're playing 11v11 and not skipping stages. And like Tony Whelan said, that a guy who works at Man United, and the other thing he said was, as I mentioned before, knowing when you just need to be the person that is just there for them. And I know that is part of coaching, but knowing when to leave the way he put it was, leave your coaching badges in the drawer. Meaning it might not be about what's your session design and this and that and these constraints and this. Just like, it's not about you, it's about them. Why do they play? Who are they? And how do you provide for that without skipping past it and not thinking? I'm getting off them was that thing of matching up their experience, but not jumping. It needs to progress on from where they've come from. Some kids' experience will start at football in this age. They might not have played much football before, or they might have had a bad experience actually for the foundation phase, and they come to you. So how do we get that right from where the kids are? But thinking about the kids first. Who are the kids? What do they need? Give them some space to breathe. some clear boundaries, all that stuff, I think is important, and not skipping stages and treating them like adults or expecting them to be like adults and play like adults when they're not quite there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray's just put a great little bit of information around, the idea that teams and players have played limited amount of time over the last sort of 2 seasons of that particular format of the game.
Yeah.
So 9v9, and now they're going to move into 11v11 next year, and they've never really played a lot of 9v9 or 7v7, whatever age group they're playing at. That the leagues and the FA get involved to actually give them some extensions there.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So on the rules, I think, and this isn't my bag in terms of sorting rules out and stuff, but yeah, I think it's almost like the steps in the development that kids might have missed out on. So to change rules and all that, it's a big there's a lot of things that need to shift. So them discussions have been ongoing. I'm not privy to them. I don't know where they're at. I think what it would be, even if the rules do stay the same, so I would say that they should it would be beneficial for the kids to have more time in the formats that they've missed.
Yeah.
However, I do get the logistical problems of changing everything. So I don't know where that's at. The other thing is, if they do stay as they are, so they will pick up, say, 11v11, then even in training or in friendlies or in bits around it, even if it's not an actual match program, is the ways. Now, I know facilities are a problem. I know cost. I know there's lots of. I know, I get the realities of it. What I'm saying. But I think if we can try and provide the kids with some smaller formats as well, even now, it's always important. Now more than ever for me. I think one of the interesting things, just for people's radar, so in academies, actually, this through the youth development phase, especially 12 to 14, the Premier League have organised a lot more. Not just because of COVID, pre-COVID, a lot more small-sided formats, varied formats. They've done a really good job of looking at the games programme as well. So they do play 11v11, but there's also supplemented by other games. Now, I understand it's a different context. I understand there's different resources and all those things, but just saying the value of it, I think the academies are really buying into the value of smaller formats for the development. Not just small formats, but has been a key part of the kids' development.
Yeah, do you want to move on, Graeme? Next slide.
Yeah. So I've talked about this a little bit, but when we're coaching in this age group, for me, it's like you've got to start with the players. Who are they? Same with any age group, particularly this, because of the difference. So we know, like, if you see a picture of a team in this age, the physical difference is at times is crazy, really. So just understand who are the players, where, and when I'm saying not just the group, I mean, like, who are the individual kids, who are the individual players. Who are each of them as young people? What personality have they got? What character have they got? What do they bring to the group? Who are they? Got to get to know them. Why do they play? They'll play for different reasons. So really consider that. It's about them. It's their game. How do we provide for their needs? How do we match up their experiences for why they play? What are their needs? What do they need at this point? Now, there's no off-the-shelf manual for this. There's also, in my opinion, it's tough. And also, you won't get it right every time. We're not expecting you to be like, I'm not asking you to have some secret one where you'll get it right. You'll get stuff wrong. We all get stuff wrong. I get stuff wrong, probably more than most. But yeah, you think, do you know what, I think he needs this or she needs this, and then you might, then you do it and you think, maybe could do a little bit more. That's a little bit too far ahead for now. Maybe they don't need that yet. But also, when they say, what are the prior experiences? For some kids, they might have only played a couple of years. For some kids at the age of 1 to 12, it might be on the 6th season. They might be nearly due a testimonial soon. So, considering that, and within the same group, you might have difference. So just paying attention to some of that. So when you're working with the kids, you understand and just think about, well, who are these kids? And where they're at in the development. So the 4 corners is a great tool as a great lens, a thinking framework of, as it's shown in the bottom left, really. So it's all integrated. And one of the problems with the four corners again is getting overly separated out, or see kids as like scientific objects, but they're just kids. It's just a way of helping us see the kids and where they're at. So through the growth physically, or the more early in terms of the development, or the later with the development, or they're going through a growth spurt. All these little challenges come into the kids' journey through this age. So where they're at, and football-wise, where they're at, or where they're at with the individual skills, where they're at with the team understanding, and where do we pitch it, both formats, but also where we're focused the learning. And then with that, with the sorry, you got a question?
Graeme, just is developing the individual. Would you say it's more so in this phase than the foundation?
I'd say every phase, guys. But what I think why we're highlighted so much in this phase is because it tends to drop away often, because coaches become focused on the team a bit more. But yeah, in some ways, because of the individual differences around the physical differences and across all four corners, social differences, I think we really got to pay attention to the individual needs, because they'll change and really evolve and develop. So, and the differences can be probably at the greatest point through this phase. So in some ways, like, I get where you come from, or whoever's asked that question. And really paying attention to like the intention and why they play as well, what do they want from it, but also where they're at. Now, again, that's like a little bit, might sound a bit vague, but I think if you start with that question, just think, who are the kids? Sarah's like this, Johnny's like this, whatever. Then, or it's just a really good place to start, and then think, well, what we're going to do for the kids, what sessions we're going to put on, what opportunities do they need, what's the diet of play, practice, matches and competition, what is that currently? And I know what I'm saying currently, not COVID, but thinking maybe beyond COVID or before, what would the balance be for them? Do they still get the chance to play, free play, where you just set a game up and let them go because they've had a tough day at school? I think there's a question about what you would do after COVID. For me, the kids have been starved of playing. They're going to need some real social connection time, and to play the game, and to play unstructured games where it's not coach led, and they'll just get the chance to dive about and play football with the spirit of football. So that they'll be desperate for that when we come back. But also the bits of practice, helping them learn how to practice well, but the different returns from practices and the matches, and even some of the competition formats that we're going to look at, and what's the volume and variety. One of the things around volume and variety is, especially volume in this age, is quite an interesting one, because as kids go through a growth spurt, they might need to do a little bit less. But other than that, often the question is, are the kids getting enough football? And again, I'm conscious there'll be a range of people on the call in different settings. So one of the challenges in academies is, are the kids getting enough? I think over the last 3 or 4 years, then that's increased a lot. But it's on a really simple level. There was a kid that once, one of the reasons that they got released at 16 was because it was down south. This example, actually, not that it matters, but was because he didn't have great game understanding was one of the reasons. But he had only played 12 games that year. So it's not a lot of games really. So one of the things, it's like, I'm saying this is sometimes it's like some simpler stuff around play development. Do the kids get enough games? Because they need to play the game to learn the game. So some of that stuff is almost, have we got some of that big stuff right? And it, like I say, it's just a consideration. I know the challenges in grassroots, depending on the league that you're in, around teams drop out with different teams, not as many teams in the league as you get to those ages, or teams falling during the year. So the reality is that can be really hard. So again, I get that, but it's just considering what are the kids getting, and what do they need? Who do they need you to be for them, and what are the kids' priorities are. I know this is just to get you thinking, because like I say, if you are currently coaching in this age group, it'll be pretty unique probably to yourself. There'll be some common challenges around it, but you might be coaching in a session where the kids just come to play. It might not even be a grassroots team. It might just be a session kids rock up to. It might be that it's a grassroots team. It might be a grassroots team that the kids want to play with their mates. It might be a grassroots team that the kids really want to get better and strive to try and get in an academy that might be around that level, and border, like, so every little situation is different, so what the kids will need will be slightly different. So just remembering to keep coming back to that, who are the kids, where they're at currently, because it'll change as they grow, so it's not fixed, it's not set. So that's one of the ongoing challenges for coaches to work through. And like, just considering, like, who are they, what are the characteristics of the individuals, what are they capable of, what are the tendencies. And when we're planning and where we pitch with sessions or the formats is what's in the comfort zone. By that I mean, like, what can they do all the time, what's in the stretch zone for them as an individual. So on this one, Mason, I've got Mason Green with this photo up, but him as a kid, but like what would be in his comfort zone, so types of finishing, skills on the ball, what in his stretch zone, maybe different types of passing that you can do sometimes, not always, what's beyond his current capabilities. Now, put any kid there, so, but it's that type of thinking, or where do you pitch it, and how do we stretch the individuals, how do we find that sweet spot where it's just the right amount of stretch, where they can like have a go at it without it being too far, and we've skipped stages, and we're asking them to play in a 4-3-3 when they're 12 and play as inverted wingers and get between the lines and all that. And like, yeah, but last year when it was the foundation phase, you're asking us to stay on the ball and be an individual and give us time to explore and make mistakes. So where do we pitch it for the individuals? Just an ongoing consideration. But that's just one individual. A different individual, then they have different needs, they have different characteristics, capabilities, tendencies. Some are like contact, some won't. Some will want to drift into space. Some will want to intercept more and read the game. Some will want to fly and attack. All that stuff that we just know, that's just timeless. It's not anything new or fancy. It's just, who are the kids, where they are, what are they currently comfortable with, that they can do all the time, that's their go-to, the fall back on. How do we just take them out of that and just help them stretch and learn and try and experiment with new things? And what's beyond, if you want, we won't get there yet. Maybe when they're 18 or maybe when they're 16, but they're not quite there yet. So we'll leave this for now, because one of the things linked to the four corners would be, for example, growth spurts. So if you're a midfielder, obviously you might, at 12 you can play 20 odd passes. All of a sudden at 14 you've got the capability of playing 40 odd or 50 odd passes, because it's just your physical, not just, but your technique, but also your physical capability allows you to do that. So all of a sudden tactically your team have got different possibilities, and you as a player, when you're opening up and you're looking and so we've got to help them explore that. As they change and they grow and the bodies change, they'll be capable of new things and different things. So we've got to help them explore that in a way that they can make sense of it as they grow and as they develop. Because this age, we talk about a bit about the teenagers, but they'll be going, these things, self-expression, autonomy, curiosity, connections with other people, these are things that are really, in any teenager, this is the age where this really starts coming out, this idea of identity, who are they as a person, where they're at, wanting to express themselves, searching for an identity. You see that a lot, don't you, with kids around associate themselves with groups or with people, maybe even some of the stuff away from the pitch around the hairstyles. I said I wasn't going to mention hair, but hairstyles, the way people dress, the groups that they associate themselves, all that is like who searching for who they are really, but they are in a football sense as well. The autonomy, they need voice and choice. So that is like a search for independence through these years, both as kids and as footballers, and they've got this curiosity to take risk and to try things and experiment and to test boundaries, as I've said, and the connections with other people and how they're seen in front of their mates. Is obviously, we know this, it's the peer pressure and all that is such a big thing in their lives, but the sort of how they're developing that football identity as well. This is just some pictures I found Phil Foden put on the other day around from ball boy to superhero, but in terms of best player in the game against Liverpool the other night, but also him a couple of years ago playing in the street with his mates. Still, the Rashford clip before about him still playing with his mates if he gets the chance. or getting a little game of Wembley, as they call it, Wembley pairs, Wembley doubles, all that type of stuff. That sometimes you think, they're professional players who wouldn't do that, but the spirit of football is still there. But they'll also be searching for the football identity. Like, what type of player am I going to be? What's my style? What's my playing style? Who am I as a player? What am I going to be known for? What do I enjoy? Whether it might be real skill and around the box, it might be becoming a real defender. So that links back to the rotation positions and thinking about just nurturing and carefully just considering who's this player becoming as they grow. But that'll be going on whether we're there or not. So I've just put this in, and I am conscious of time. I'm just going to play it because a couple of bits of it. I just want you to consider this is a kid called Louis, wearing number 8. So when the clips play, just make notes. One of the things is about how do you coach the individual then within the team. So there's often people think about individual practice with this, but that's not necessarily the case, or it's not necessarily about 1v1s. It might be that. But it might just be that whilst the game's going on, or we're doing games with the kids, or they're playing matches on the weekend, as well as wondering how's the team doing, just really being able to zoom in on, but how's Louis doing today? What's Louis? What's he trying to learn? What we're trying to develop with Louis? So everyone's trying to everyone's trying to receive play forwards. I think they're trying to play through midfield. And a guy called Andy's taking the session. This was his grassroots team. Now, the facilities are posh, but it is his grassroots team from Crewe. We brought them in for a day of filming a couple of years ago. So just as you're watching it, the team's got a thing about playing through midfield, really, and with a specific thing about receiving and play forwards. That's what they're working on. So it's a game. You'll notice it's a game. But what are the capabilities of the individual players and their stage of development? So look at the players, but just have a go at looking at Louis within it. Who's Louis as a player? Do you know what I mean? Have that in your mind. What are the returns from what are the returns afforded? So what does the session actually give Louis and all the kids, but especially Louis, the chance to practice? And what do they experience and have the chance to learn? And therefore, what's the role of the coach in that? What is the role of the coach in setting that up? Just again, consideration. So just play the clip. So watch out for Louis. He's wearing number 8. I'll point him out.
Ready, yellows. Play.
There he is. There on the right.
Good, Louis McGarry.
So there, in terms of, I've just paused it. Hopefully it's playing all right. So when we watch games, we can look at it from a team point of view, like what are the systems, what are the formations that they're playing. That's really important to bear in mind. I get that. But sometimes if we're only zoomed out, it's almost like something's on like a documentary. You press zoom in or zoom out. If you zoom out and you're looking at the whole pitch, that's fine because they're playing 3 at the back, 3 midfield, 3 up front against a 3-2-2 or whatever it is. Yeah, that's great. Or on a match, it might be 4-3-3 against a 4-diamond-2 or whatever. But also being able to then, as that's going on, as a coach, I'm talking about, not so much as a coach, being able to focus in on, how are the individual kids getting on? So how's Louis doing within it? What's his role? What's he trying to do? What are the challenges that he's facing? So then how do we help him?
Excellent, Louis. Excellent.
So already he's went and asked for the ball. If we go back, little things that he's almost thinking about Louis. So he's taking a good position, asking for the ball, gets it, finds a way of playing forward.
Excellent, Louis. Excellent.
Wants to be involved in the game by the look of it.
Good boy, Ollie. Good, Louis. Great touch, Tom.
And sometimes what I said before about this happens in first team football as well, but just when the shape gets disorganised, often in the realities of a game, especially kids' games, it will look like this, where people, like I say, it happens actually sometimes in first team, that a midfielder might drop in, but it might just become a bit disorganised, the game as the ball's in play, and that's natural for kids football. sometimes we again think, oh, why are they there? What? And almost get a little bit too fixed on some of that, and they'll get there. They're getting there. They're learning it. And there's what you'll see within this. There's some traces of it, and some bits where they haven't quite got it yet. But that's fine. That's where they're at.
Love that. Great play, Ollie. Excellent, Ollie. 3v1. Play. Okay, Rubes, hold.
So this was I should have said, sorry, this was an under 14s group, I think, and like you say, the grassroots club from Crewe area, but they're quite a decent team, as you can probably sort of pick up from. So that's a bit more the context. So that's a little bit. You've seen a little bit of Louis, just a minute or two. I'm just going to flick on to the next.
Ready, yellows?
The next clip to see how they're all getting on, but then also being able to focus in on Louis.
Put it down and play. Do you want Rubes? Put it down and play. Put it on the floor and play. Good.
So sorry, just again, I think they played. The yellows were replicating, like these were two centre back split. That's what they did on the weekend with a midfielder. So there were still some team stuff, but it was just depends on where the players are at, to what extent you work around the individuals, or you might try and focus on the team. So I'm saying that for coaches, from a coaching point of view, of where you think the players might be for where you pitch it.
It's not bad. Now close up, Josh. Close up, Josh. Ashton, get in the middle. Ashton, get central. Good boy, Reagan. Out you come the other way. Oh. Right idea, Carl. Right idea, Nino. How are you going to get on it, Ollie? How are you going to get on it, Ol? How are you going to get on it? How do you get on it now? Where's the space? As it comes, where you going? Excellent. Love that. Love that. Love it. Now get out of here. 1v1. Ollie. Great attitude, Ollie Langdon. Love that.
Just flicking back, a bit of
Boy,
context
Reagan.
Again was
Out you come. You know.
On this clip. So what the coach Andy was thinking was, Louis quite, I was just seeing, when he's on the ball, he's really quite skillful and comfortable with the ball. One of the things that he was just going to start trying to help was how does he think ahead and prepare before the ball comes, and start thinking about what positions he might take up so he doesn't get attracted to the ball so much. So he's Andy, whatever we'll talk on in a sec. So that's what he's trying to get him to do. Really, that's why I've highlighted the clip the way it was. Because
how are you going to get on it, Ollie?
On this one, he sort of, as we put on the text, he sort of keeps a little bit of his positions. That a really good example of, as a midfield,
how are you going to get on it, Ol?
Some good positioning.
How are you going to get on it? How do you get on it now? Where's the space? As it comes, where you going? Excellent. Love that. Love that. Love it. Now get out of here. 1v1.
Now, on this clip,
Ashton, are you up?
If you notice where he's at now, he gets, like I say, he's playing midfield. He's going to get attracted to the ball. Now, one of the things you might think, well, there's two ways of looking at this. Then this is the way it depends on where he's at. And I don't know the players at all, so I'm not commenting on it. I'm just raising it as a point where you might say, just go and get on the ball, play, lads. Just get a feel of the ball, play, and just go where you need to go to get it. That's fine. And you'll really develop individual skill and a feel for the game. Or you might say, no, like Louis, we're going to, don't drop in there today. Back to two defenders are going to be there. You need to move up the pitch, back to where you're playing. So that's the little bit of decision around the coaching, I think, around what in this age group where it can be quite hard around how much leeway do you give them? How much do you then? There's a question came in about team structure. I think you've got to help them gradually understand the roles in the team. Don't expect them to get it straight away, and also don't. I think you got to give them a little bit of room and a bit of freedom within it. That's a personal opinion.
With him in the centre of the pitch. Are you happy with him being in the centre of the pitch? Can you nick it, Riggs? Good boy. Go on, Reagan, keep going. Good boy, Riggs. Forward, Nino. Nino. Yeah, can you get facing forwards? Break. Good boy, Louis. What did Ollie? All right. Leg, all right. What have you done? You step on your toe. This Ollie. Ollie, did you step on his toe? I'm only joking, it's all right.
As well as the actual Louis in the section, just take obviously notice of the environment.
Excellent, you two. Love that. Love that for a little combo to get out. Good. Can you lick the play up? Good. Can we get it finished, Tom? Love that. Here you go, Ruben.
So there, that was obviously a really good example of a combination. So his skills, I've played again.
Excellent position.
His skills to play off the cuff and combine are great. One of the challenges is, and again,
Ashton,
not discouraging that, I'm just pointing it as a point of discussion is around leaving them to get the ball and staying in space. And there's a fine balance. And I think that sometimes in this age, it's this type of stuff that becomes the real, the challenge, the subtlety. When do you say, no, Louis, come away and get higher, play your position, or when go and get on the ball and do a bit and combine?
The pitch. Are you happy with him being free in the centre of the pitch?
Sorry.
Can you? Did you step on his toe? I'm only joking. It's all right. Great position. Excellent position.
So we notice he comes towards the ball. It's a great little
excellent, you two. Love that.
Brilliant
Love
combination.
that for a little combo to get out. Good. Can you lick the play up? Good. Can we get it finished, Tom? Love that. Here you go, Ruben. Excellent, Blues. Well done, Louis, Joe. Well done, you two in there. Don't let him play now, Nino. Get goal side. Good. Shake. Jack, can you get on it? Jack, how are you going to get on it?
You notice how he scanned a couple of times. Real signs of skillful
boy, Morgan. Good boy,
play.
Louis. Louis, think about, so you've been really effective in here when you've got it off the floor, off Joe. So think about, can he do that job? And then can you play off the shoulders in here to then get us in a goal? Makes sense. So you take your position off where Joe ends up.
But then Andy's obviously seen with Louis and just thought, I'm not going to stop it and try and force it on him, force the structure on him. But I'm just going to almost subtly coach him a different way, let the ball go and just point it out and a less direct way. Well, he's 1v1, but again, not saying that is the way to do it, but it's an interesting way instead of just stopping him. So he's noticed it. He's given a little bit of room to breathe, but he's also then said, "Oh, Louis, have you thought about this?" So that balance between letting players go and almost coaching them with a different position, I think that's an interesting balance in this age. And so I think it's a good way of doing it. Andy did in terms of the idea of you don't always need to stop it. You can coach subtly at times, especially with this age group. And then just this around some of Andy's thinking.
Talk to me about some of that stuff we've just done.
We're using a lot of 1-2s and quick shot, quick
1-2s, passing forward. Back foot. Talk to me about back. Who said back foot? I knew you'd say it, because I've been telling you it as well. Go on.
So if the pass is coming in from there, take on your back foot from there.
If it's the right thing to do. So don't listen to me if I tell you to receive on your back foot and actually it's not the right thing to do. Okay? Because sometimes you might have someone right behind you. So actually it's not the right thing to do. So then take your touch whichever way you need to.
You said when me and Joe went to the keeper, I could have got him behind him.
Yeah. Perfect. So can you start, and this is really important, can you start taking your position off your other players in your unit? So we talked about units on Sunday. Do you remember midfield, defensive, attacking? So if Joe goes here, then if us two do exactly the same, we end up in what? In a line and quite flat. So can you take your position off Joe and play on different lines like you said before we started? Okay.
Did you get what you'd hoped to get?
Yeah, it was mainly about embedding some of the stuff that that we've done previously. So that initial game is about what did we do last week? What have we done in the last block? and them not forgetting some of the information that we've already put in place. Playing into midfielders, getting the ball into midfielders to then play forward is really, really tough if we can't get the ball out from the goalkeeper. So it's about making sure their messages are sort of embedded so we get to where we need to get to a little bit quicker. So the ball gets to the midfielders sort of straight away rather than me having to go, right, centre-backs, you need to split. I think I did it once where I just give them a bit of reinforcement around, remember, if the keeper gets it here, where would you go on the pitch? But I think some of the stuff around the ways of playing out from the back sort of embedded a little bit in them now. So it's a way of just me getting a quick snapshot of it, seeing it happen, and that means then I can go and work with, start to work with the midfielders a little bit. And again, that was quite probably individual again. It was sort of floating in between them and just trying to prompt and nudge them in different directions. So Louis about not wanting to get on, he wants to get on the ball all the time and wants to be the number 4, the 8 and the 10. And actually it's impossible. So actually trying to stretch him out a little bit and say, Louis, you take your movement off Sol and trust Sol to get the ball, and then you're in a better position to get it. So it's just a chance really to set up the rest of the session in a 10-minute.
That was the one with Louis that you mentioned during the session as well, wasn't it? In terms of, I don't know if it's the same Louis because I know there's two.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the same Louis. Yeah.
But that one of being a bit more patient and having that idea to receive.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It did come out a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, and he knows, and I know the kid, like, he can do both and he can do all. And last year in the league he was in, he could probably be the 4, take it past the 8 and 10 and score. Whereas this year, where they're playing, asks a little bit more of them. That if he's not as responsible as he needs to be, or he needs to understand the game a little, then he gets caught, or we get caught, or we get out of balance, or we get out of shape. So it's trying to be constant with that message a little bit with him, so he understands where we're at, and actually he's playing with it and learning about it and learning where to do it and where not to do it, and that's the beauty of doing it in a game way. So I think he lost it 4 or 5 times in that session where he was unsure when to get it. That's fine, but then he also scored 2, set 2 up by being in the right place, and then I just tried to reinforce them little messages as we were going through the session of when you did do this, this happened at the end of it. So when you did play trust the first player and you played off the back of that, well, actually then we got in and we had 2 shots at target or whatever, just to make him aware maybe that actually when he does do that, this happens as a result of it.
The reason I've included that, not just the sessions, almost that's as important because it's where Louis is at and what Andy's been trying to do now. There were some mistakes, some good bits that worked well, some bits where you see him figuring it out. You can see some skills out of his scanning and receiving skills and are really good. And so I'm not saying that's the example of this is how you should do it. It's just a bit. I was conscious of doing these, and because of COVID, we can't do any practical. I just wanted to get some session footage over and see kids and see what it might look like now. Each group of kids is different, and each kid's different. I think one of the challenges, as I was saying for us, is not just thinking about when we get to 11v11 and the kids are at that age, is not just thinking I want my number 8 to do this, or I want my number 4 to do this. Well, who's Louis or John or Jackie or whoever? Who is it? Where they're at? What do they bring? What can they do? Because it's vital that we don't take stuff out of the kids or put our ceilings on the kids. We need to, whoever they are, however they play, the tendencies, the characteristics, we need to try and work from that and think, well, I wonder how you can learn to be a better version of you, really, and that's the real challenging bit as a coach. So the in terms of sessions, you can put sessions on, and we'll know about session returns, and I know you've had some stuff around that. Or there's been stuff in previous webinars like this and through your courses and all this. All that stuff's important, but through these ages, I think it's really important just to pay attention to the players. Who are the players within the game, even just how they're getting on. How's Louis doing? How's John doing? How's whoever, and then coaching them accordingly and maybe pitching it. So Andy's bit there. Well, this is where this has been doing a bit of this. This is where Louis is at. I did this. I'm not sure. He got some of it. Didn't get other bits. So we might do the same bit next week. But the other thing sometimes is it takes time. It might take a few weeks to start getting it, or like stuff around staying on the ball for a different kid might be that still need a bit more of that. And that's fine. doesn't need to be a rush of the process. Just trust the process. We've got time on our side to help the kids learn gradually, and they'll learn progressively and gradually over time. It doesn't just like happen. So just that thing of, we're not going to solve it all on one night or one session or 10 minutes of a session. But what bits can we then build on or revisit that they've done before? So remember this stuff we've done great. Now think about doing this in a different area or whatever. But that's the way I think we've got to try and build on the kids' learning and what the kids are coming with, and then match the types of sessions to that where we can. And just quickly on and I'm going to skip through this because of time, but one of the statements from the national teams that the under 15, 16, 17s used for a few years was around play with freedom. And what that meant was, because often I think we say these types of things about players, like, I want you to make your own decisions, or play the picture in front of you, or think for yourself, or express yourself, or like play free. We want that type of feeling. Our players would talk about it a lot, but then to what extent? How do we deal with it if it doesn't go right? Do we still actually, do our behaviours and our responses match up to that thing about playing with freedom? Again, it's always a useful thing to consider. If I'm wanting this, then they need the conditions to be able to do it. I'm just going to play this through once quickly. And so if the ball, this is an England first team game, men's game. If John Stones gets it, John Stones on the ball, is like, well, what would you want him to do? Now, we'd all have different things. Or what might you do on the ball? What would be good play? He decides, for whatever reason, he has a look at the picture, he has a look at it. Delph's trying to get away from Modric, can't get away. Dyer is trying to support, whatever. So that's the picture. So as I said, Modric is really attached to Delph when you look away from the ball. So what that cuts off the passing line in a way. But what it obviously does is opens up the space. So he takes it and off he goes. Now, a couple of things on that. Now he gets there and he plays it off. So once he's played it, from the sideline, before we get there, from the sideline, what are you shouting on? Are you saying well done for stepping in, or are you saying, oh, just pass it and stay in? Again, people have different views on that. One thing I would say is, if you never get the chance to do it, and never get the chance to know what they're capable of, that's an opinion. The next bit really is, what happens if you give it away? How would you respond? Would you shout at them? Would you let it go? Would you say, maybe what was the picture? How would you deal with it? And now almost this picture has came. So he's given the ball to Chilwell, I think it is. Does he? What would you want from him now? Would you want him to carry on his run and make a little corner run down the side for a return pass? Or would you want him to stay around here and play, and maybe support and bounce a pass back? Or would you say, now you've done your bit, get back in? Now there's value in all of that. Any of those choices. But I think what I'm just trying to prompt and probe you at is, what are the things in the football that when we talk about non-negotiables and behaviours and behaviour management within the football, what are the norms? What are the things you say well done for? What do the kids get the chance to do? Or what do you say, nah, you're not doing this round here? Either you say that, or by your behaviours they soon realise, I'm not allowed that. I'm not allowed to do that yet. And that could be any situation on the pitch. So that was just an example because it was highlighted. So just again, something to think about this thing about freedom. So I'll come back to these questions just at the end because of time. One of the last things I'm just going to touch on is about skill, about being skillful. So touch about bridging the gap and how we build on from the foundation phase, really, if we can, and consider who are the kids, where they're at, they're still not adults. We've touched a bit on like the individual within the team and playing with freedom, and how we even within team type sessions, focus about, who's the individual and how do we then coach them, or just focus a bit on, who's Louis? What does Louis need? So as I said, Louis is really skillful in my opinion. I thought, and also if you look at this thing about skill isn't just about the technique. It's not just about the mechanics on the ball. It's not just about the feet. It's about his scanning and what he's trying to do and what he's capable of. It all comes together for those skillful moments. So when he's scanning and noticing and looking and anticipating to try, that's the bit Andy's trying to get him to do. Think tactically about anticipating and be skillful ahead of what comes next. So I'm going to let my mate get it and I'm going to pull away from the ball. Now that's a really hard thing for kids to learn, to stay away from the ball. So this thing about skill it's as much about the stuff on the left of this. If you look at this on the left skill with the circles, it's much about what they perceive is actually what they do, about how they sense and feel a moment, how they scan what they notice, what they're looking for, the timing of the skill. All these things around perceiving, as well as what is the actual skill, what is the technique, because that's the bit where games can be really good to learn. And because you've got to learn about timing, you've got to feel it, you've got to see the picture, you've got to feel the moment, you've got to play it at the right time. This is all linked to like decision making, really, is another way of putting it. But through this, we've got to help them explore some of that through this age group. See what and it's not just an attacking thing, it's about skillful defending. So as I say, skills not about just doing skills. That's not what we mean. We mean about being skillful, about being in the tactics that come with it, about being cunning, about positioning, about deceiving your opponent, about changing the speed and rhythm, and exploiting your strengths and using your strengths and exploiting their weaknesses, and the cat and mouse. And that's really what we're talking about. And different players will have different ways of doing it. But through these ages, they still need loads of reinforcement and opportunity to practice this. And we'll really have to value it, in our opinion. One of the things on the formats, I just fiddle about this slide again. It's not scientific, but this is the if you think about the teams and the coordination together and the complexity of the pictures if a player gets the ball, this is how it builds. So that's why it's important sometimes to reduce the noise back to playing some smaller formats. So yes, for the physical returns and more touches of the ball, but just so the players have got less to sort of figure through when they're looking. It can be really helpful to help hone some of the individual skills and tactics, and then put it back in the big game and see how they get on with it. So that's just something to think about. And what returns do you get from the different formats? With even in practice, when do you do 1v1s, or when do you do 4v4s, or when you play a 9v9 game? I think Andy there was playing something like 9v8 or 8v7, including the goalkeepers and the rush goalkeeper. So yeah, just what do you do and why, and for what reasons, and these connections build up. So when Pete talks about staying on the ball, it's about the individual connection with the ball, and then it's about the individual connection with the ball against an opponent, the 1v1. How you can control your moment will dictate then what you can do and what you can choose to do. So, but it leads, so you can't get into real good combination play without the first player on the ball being in control, or being able to sort of be skillful to whether to pass, to connect and get the right way to pass. But it also can be the individual off the ball against opponents, as you said about Delph and Modric. So that individual losing your marker. So focusing on that and almost thinking, well, they need to have a good idea of that. That's why Pete has been so big on staying on the ball, because the individual skills and tactics are vital. And Paul McGuinness, one of my other colleagues, is massive on it as well. And then you can get into the two-player connections and combinations. And then you can get into, well, if you can do these things, then you perform really well in your unit. And as a team, it connects, it joins up. And often the best teams, this is the framework and really important. So I'm not saying that isn't important. I'm not trying to turn people away from that. That's not what we're saying. We also need to pay attention of, that's a team structure and the framework. What's the skills and tactics and craft that goes in? It's almost like what oils the machine, really. What goes into it? And again, same defensively, whether it's the individual at the ball or the individual off the ball, or how you defend in twos and pairs, and getting that stuff right before we jump into the team and expecting them to be able to perform it all in a team. So that's just one of the things to consider. And the last thing from me is just this clip from Gareth.
There's no question when I watch grassroots football now and compare what's being encouraged to get it out of there and get it forward. When I started playing, generally speaking, we're light years further ahead in kids being allowed to express themselves and encouraged to play in a skillful way. Coaches will see the way that we're trying to get the England teams to play. I think our under-17s were a brilliant case study in highlighting what we were looking for when we started this project in the style of play. We wanted to create teams that win, but that's a byproduct of the right processes, the right way of playing, the right principles.
So I think we made huge strides. And just to cut some quick answer to these questions is, are we still looking to let them play with freedom and creativity? Absolutely, would be my shout with that. Now, freedom doesn't mean anyone can go anywhere on the pitch, but it just means that as they're getting to understand the roles and responsibilities a bit more, that they can even say defensively. So if you're playing as a centre back and the centre forward for the other team drops into midfield, do you go in or do you stay? Do you just stay in your shape? Now, if you go in, then that might feel a bit different. But if they never get the chance to practice it or feel it, they'll never be able to do it. So it's giving them room to figure some of this stuff out and like hone their craft in their own playing style, whatever position they play, with or without the ball. And the environment has to be conducive to that. So session design, I think if you only get the kids once a week, games are great. You get them involved. You can play 4v4s. You can play 8v8, whatever the numbers you've got. And obviously you can tweak the games, obviously all that stuff around constraints. But kids this age will want to feel a competition and probably often they'll ask for a game. So games are a great way of learning, but obviously so is practice, depending on who the kids are, why they play, how often you get them. So just consider that. But if you ever stuck, John Allpress, one of our FA colleagues, used to always say, if you're always not sure what to do, play a game. Kids are engaged and they're learning through the game because they might not get as much repetition of the individual techniques, but they'll be having to assess the game, see the game, make decisions, work things out, play with people. So it's maybe overly simplistic, but and you can take it overly literal out. But yeah, just consider that games can be a great way, and different formats and smaller formats as well can still be really useful, as well as the bigger formats as they keep progressing, which are important. So yeah, constant practices can be important, especially probably off the back of growth spurts when they're finding the coordination again. But just understand with that is, don't expect them to become better at making decisions if they're not practicing making decisions. So there might be a mechanical thing, but they won't learn the perception. So skill needs perception as well as the action. Where if you're only doing constant skills, there's a chance they're not really getting the chance to practice the perception stuff, the scanning, the notice, and the feeling. And yeah, skillful players I think are still undervalued culturally. Now we'll all have a view on that. What I mean by skillful players in this is, like you say, attackers, defenders who can outthink and outwit and intercept and be sneaky and outthink as well as out muscling, which is still important. So it's all that stuff around skill. I just think we need to appreciate and help players hone the craft. So guys, I've really waffled for too long now. Any last questions?
Cara, just from my point of view, I've wrote some things down as we've gone through that presentation, and sort of takeaways, reflection on that. We need to remember that they're still children when they move into this phase. We need to be patient with them, and what's the individual needs, because they're all going to be different within that group. Would I be right in saying?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Yeah. Could have just said that at the start and saved an hour and a half.
Graeme, absolutely fantastic. I'm sure everyone on the call tonight has enjoyed that as much as I have, because I've had some experience working in this phase as well as the foundation. For me, this is the most challenging one, but very rewarding if you get it right, like you said earlier in the presentation. Really appreciate you giving up your time. You're a very, very busy man, as I know from emailing you and getting replies back. But thanks once again, and hopefully we'll see you in the summer out on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And like I say, if there's any follow-up stuff, please get in touch. Twitter's not a bad way to keep the conversation going. I like to say, because of the way it is and the numbers, which it has been a lot of talking to people, so apologise for that. But bear in mind, it's recorded. I think it's one of those things like go back over. So there is a lot of stuff, and I get that, and it's been long. There's almost 3 sections there, which so if there's anything that ever again that I want followed up on, let us know. And yeah, I think it's just about who are the kids, what do they need, how do we help them be skillful and be themselves and bring out the best in themselves, knowing that it's going to be challenging, and the challenges you face as a coach, rest assured the person next door, the other people on this call are facing the same challenges. So stick at it, it's worth it in the end, I think you said, Gaz. And thanks for anyone that's still awake, then appreciate that, everyone.
Great, thanks to everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you very soon.